Portland. I'm soaking in it. I'm not going to complain too much. Of course I am. Anyway, in Hollywood is something called the 5-in-1 or 4-in-1 or 3-in-1 or 8-in-1 blank cartridge. It's designed for use in any firearm with a similar chamber shape for the cartridge, hull, yada yada yada. But can handle any different caliber because it's just firing a blank. A non-propelled object, no object propelled, using a charge to make a loud noise. And usually they have a heavy or very fast-burning material in them, sometimes to produce smoke or just audio. Sometimes they just produce a flashover effect so that they can be, these days, computer-generated, edited, so that you can add in sound and visual effects so you don't have to fire real rounds because you don't want to. First time this is seen is in a movie, one of the first movies. It was a cowboy movie, where at the end of the movie, the bad guy points the blank gun at the camera and fires, and it's recorded. So, by reshaping the casing ever so slightly, this allows it to be used in the following. Originally, it was just made for whatever was available on set or whatever they could get cheaply from movies that they convert over. And the main thing is, on the entire set, you have no live rounds of any kind. See also the Crow. Here are the sizes currently usable with one physical shaped cartridge. It doesn't mean you can throw a projectile. You're not throwing a bullet here. You're just making it to where the case fits. You know, the joke is, just because you can chamber it doesn't mean you should fire it. Well, I'm going to have a link to all these different ones. The 454 Casull, the 460 Smith & Wesson, the 44 Special, 44 Magnum, 3840 and 4440, the 45 Long Colt, and of course because of that, the 410 shotgun shell. That's a lot of different things you can put together and fire, and it just uses one cartridge. And yes, conceivably you could use obviously a very light propellant. At this point it would just basically be literally a primer, an ass kicker, but a primer, and have it throw some object, or use it as a propulsor charge directly behind I guess it would be a breech-loaded slug you'd put into the barrel that would fit that particular barrel, but have a universal propulsive charge. Also, technically, you could make a skirted projectile that would jam in the barrel and have this on the end of it, so you could just buy a bunch of these and do this. But obviously, it's not what it's for, and it's obviously a lot of these are going to blast form to whatever shape is inside of it, not be usable later. Most of these are plastic these days. Now, this brought up one of the things I want to be able to do, which is not just making a universal double-ended barrel for, like, let's say 22 Magnum on one end and 22 rimfire standard on the other, and be able to just flip the barrel around. I'm actually kind of fine-tuning this design idea, and it won't be the same as the one that was inspiring it. This allows you to use cheap, or were at the time cheap, Hollywood blanks you could buy almost anywhere from suppliers. You could also put 209 shot shell primers into something with the same shape. And you could also use a bullet mold to make hot glue stick or wax bullets for them that would be then basically formed into the shape of the rest of the bullet, so you'd end up with something that would fit whatever you put it into, no matter what I just mentioned. Now, this is a very small range of these, but this allowed you to use a very large range of different pistols, rifles, and yes, a shotgun to do this. See also movies where they put together, like, I'm not kidding, a very small diameter shotgun and used it to just make something come out of the barrel and made it look like some 80 caliber thing or something like that, or 90 caliber thing, and they might have used a 410 shotgun blank, maybe even these things. It's easy to do that, and you can make something that looks very visually convincing on camera and just get a bunch of Foley artists for the audio. The most common shell case hull diameter and size range for the parts of these things that were supposed to be listed. I'm trying to reverse engineer this. The various parts are on the Wikipedia article listed this way as the rim thickness, the neck, not the shoulder or crimp or any other part, the neck, and the base. Now, base and neck are usually about the same diameters. The rim is larger because it's a usually rimmed or semi-rimmed bullet that stops because the rim keeps it from going in too far, so you can use any length of shell. That's how 22 calibers work. But some of them are head-spaced on them having the bullet engage the rifling and only go in a certain depth. So that means these things have to be a lot shorter than some of the other cartridges might be. The most common base diameter was 4.57 or 11.6 millimeters. This ranged up to 0.48 inches or 12.2 millimeters maximum, very nearly a 50 caliber at base, right above the rim, which is right where the ass end of the bullet is, or cartridge. The neck, the opposite end of it, not including shoulder or whatever, was 0.455 or 11.6 millimeters. The other one's inch. Most common sizes, but this ranged from 480 all the way down to 416 or 12.2 millimeters all the way down to 10.6 millimeters. That's for the neck. That would be away from the base, away from the rim. The rim diameters were most commonly 0.514 inches or 13.1 millimeters and ranged from 0.535 or 13.6 millimeters to 512 down to 512 or 13 millimeters exactly. Rim thicknesses only range from 1.5 to 1.7 millimeters, otherwise known as 0.65 or 0.60 millimeters. And the most common one was 1.5 millimeters, 1.5 millimeters, a dime and a half of thickness, as it is sometimes called. So the only common sizes that were truly common, and were also at one end or the other, were just the rim thickness and I guess the base thickness right above the rim. The rest of them all had a lot of range to them, and the most common ones were whatever, but the small size was the most common because you could put a small size into a larger cavity. So that is probably how they did it, which means they're never really going to fit really well enough to create a good gas-tight seal on anything that has a breech to barrel gap of any kind or anything like that. But you can load these in revolvers and that sort of thing, and they'll work if they have the rim on them. But you're going to have outgassing. Okay. The idea is it's a big compromise for doing a very specific thing, making a loud bang, or making a flash, or both, or making smoke, or all three. Now, why would anybody think of this as far as reloading? Well, this allows you to try to create a chambering that would be midway between them, or some set, well, obviously with a base versus neck, you could make a gun that had it doing a taper to it. This is how a lot of shotgun bores are done, or excuse me, chambers, out of necessity, which means they're limited in depth or not, depending on whether or not it's a straight barrel versus properly chambered. Same thing with these bullets. Many of these cartridge casings are tapered or not tapered, and that can be a problem. That's why you have to have extractors or ejectors. Others, it's not a problem at all. And yes, there is such a thing as something that allows it to overblow and get stuck, apparently. But that was a side note somewhere. So anyway, next part of this thing. 12-gauge shotguns nominally have a bore. This is the bore diameter down the majority of the length of the barrel. That's how we define it. Hand wave. And it's 0.729 or almost exactly 73 caliber. But that's not really how it is because it's based on how heavy the mass is if it was a sphere, and that's just a standard. It's kind of a generalized rule. There's no stated wall thickness for a minimum thickness or maximum thickness for a shotgun barrel. Now, the reason I'm bringing up shotgun barrels is even though they're bigger bore and you can fire things very, very fast, they don't have to fire fast. They fire a large amount of material, and they can fire at a fairly low speed. It's the mass of the object that you're using mainly. 22 caliber bullet or 17 caliber bullet, they actually exist, have to be fired at really high speed to do any damage because of the terminal velocity effects and blah, blah, blah. So, at essentially, you know, the casing is almost like an 80 caliber casing, and it necks down, if you want to call it that, inside the chambering for a bunch of little pellets to almost 73 caliber. They don't have to have a wall thickness standard because you're going to do all sorts of weird things in the barrel, making the shape change because it's not using a single solid mass. Except for progressive squeeze bores and stuff like that where it goes large to small, like I was describing, where it's actually the bore and the chamber, otherwise known as that pipe shotgun you saw on YouTube that was somehow bored out to be a little bit more sophisticated. Most of them have ridiculous amounts of gymnastics done with how big or little the openings are as the shotgun pellets, birdshot or buckshot, go through. But what is the minimum wall thickness, and is that the measurement for it? Now, it's based on proof level, meaning you have to fire basically an overdriven charge of some ratio above whatever the maximum standard you could buy out of a store is for use on it. For instance, there are some barrels that are designed to take obscene amounts of pressure, but they're usually larger diameter, like sometimes double diameter, the kind of thing that throws you across the street or out of a tree if you're trying to fire from one. Don't do that. Or will bury your shoulder into the ground if it goes off a second time. I have a friend who had that happen. Pile driver. But anyway, what's the minimum thickness? Now, this is going along with material science. Does it have to have one? Well, here are the United Kingdom versus CIP standards for shotgun barrels. Someone actually mentioned them, and I was able to confirm them. Links below in the description. Look below me. If the bore is worn more than 10/1000ths of an inch from what it was supposed to be when it was made, and a lot of barrels have that information in them when they're done with the proofing, it's no longer in proof, and it must be, in the United Kingdom, legal for resale. It has to be reproofed if that's detected. And anybody who doesn't check these things is an idiot. Look for pitting. Look for damage. Also, if you're removing pitting, you either have to reline the barrel, which could be very easy depending on the type, or you're going to be sanding it and trying to clean it up, and this will happen. You sand lengthwise, not in spirals, because you'll create buffeting and standing wave, shock wave kind of things, and all sorts of cavitation effects. That's an actual word that's used. Wow, when you see things about that are normally used in referring to shotguns, I mean on shotgun pages talking about stuff that's normally involved in hypervelocity jet aircraft engines, that's when you need to start studying engineering. So anyway, here we go. In order to be legal in the UK, if it's off by 1/1000th, you have to reproof it, because it's assumed it's either worn, damaged, or just doesn't have the right proofing data. And if somebody makes a mistake by stamping the wrong numbers, you have to redo it again. And they have to leave the record of that on there. That's why the barrel has those marks underneath it when you take it apart, if you took it apart. The CIP standard minimum barrel wall thickness says the following. Outside, from the breech face and the chamber towards the muzzle, distance of 600 millimeters from where the shotgun shell's ass end is can be 0.3 millimeters. And 0.6 millimeters at 200 millimeters from the ass end of the bullet. Now what that means is it can be a little around a half millimeter. Minimum thickness. Now, if you've been watching this channel, you know I mentioned all the different materials, science rules that I use, and why I bring up shotguns and rifles and bullets and pellets, and I'm sure his voice box is rated for at least, 120 proof tonight. But anyway, if it's less than 0.012 inch minimum, that's the minimum. If it's less than 0.009 inch, it's considered worn out, according to another listing. Now, when I tried to look this up, if you were looking this video up to try to find an answer, welcome to the crazy house. Getting that information is extremely difficult. It's a real simple reason. If it's an aluminum barrel, you need something about a foot thick for some shots, and honestly, you could use something that's paper thin for others. If it's made out of stainless, it's going to be a lot thinner. It doesn't have to be as thick. The idea is that you make the barrel weigh as little as possible so you can swing the barrel around for actual practical hunting or self-defense purposes. But the fact that there is, in the United States specifically, there is no stated limit. If it blows up in your face, we don't care. Consumers. We're just so cuddly here. But anyway, see also the Los Angeles Police Department 2019 official blaster, Brune-Littrige Model 1900 mechanism for chambering and then firing a bullet that is reversible just before it's fired, how a New England Arms H&R shotgun action works, and a working cutaway action, transfer bar, and rotary hammer for gun. Videos below, visualizing things. Now, why did I do this last part of the video? RFI, RFC. If you know of actual standards written up anywhere, Sammy doesn't have them. I need to know bore diameters and metal thicknesses and metallurgical data. This is not ITAR restricted. These are 100-year-old designs. This should have been written down somewhere, including the metallurgical mixes and whether or not you have to use caseinite. But I'm going to be measuring actual shotgun barrels to find out the answers, because looking up online is like looking up a hog's butt for a ham sandwich. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.